A psycho Karen threatens to call the cops on me for parking in front of her house, claiming that this is the third time she's told me not to park there, despite the fact that I've never been by her house ever in my life. And I've honestly never run into someone as crazy as this lady because she absolutely was out of her mind. Here's what happened. So I'm a 6'3", 250-pound male, and I work at a job that requires me to care for lawns. The way my work for my company operates is that I will pull up to a customer's house, usually in front of the lawn section. I will need to make sure that, for one, I'm not blocking a fire hydrant or a mailbox, as this is quite literally illegal, and I would get into a massive amount of legal trouble even if I was just sitting in front of them for less than a few minutes. Secondly, I need to make sure that I'm not blocking the customer's driveway or the neighbor's driveway, while also ensuring that the door to access my equipment is on the correct side, and this would be preferably away from the street. I'm also only allowed around 10 minutes for anything under 5,000 square feet. In total area, I usually have about 25 stops in a day. And yes, this is as hectic as it sounds. Usually, I start work at around 7 o'clock in the morning, and I don't finish until 4:30 or even 5. And the worst part is that my company is currently in its slow season, so being fast and efficient is crucial if you want to get home at a decent time. Usually, this has the added effect of doing each stop as quickly as I can, since I know that if I don't walk fast enough and at a correct pace, I will slowly start to fall behind. To be clear, I walk, climb hilly terrain, climb stairs, and push a 20 to 40-pound seat spreader on just about every type of rough terrain you can think of, and this comes with the side effect of walking around 10 to 20 miles a day. And my God, how I wish this was an exaggeration. As I pulled my work truck into the cul-de-sac, I noticed that I had two stops almost right next to each other on the same street and on the same side of the road. This is uncommon, but does happen from time to time and is greatly appreciated because it means less driving throughout the day for me. The two houses were right next to each other, except for their neighbor whose house looked smashed in between the two much larger homes. So this meant that I wouldn't have to put my equipment up after I was finished with the first house, and I could instead directly move over to the other house, saving somewhere around 15 minutes of load and unload. The first house had a fire hydrant in front of it, and the other had a mailbox for the neighbor. Now, the Karen's house, who is the Karen of this story, had nothing in front of it, and also conveniently had a gravel section where one could park a car off the street. However, because I've been in situations where customers don't like us using their gravel patches, I just went ahead and I parked next to it on the street itself. Fast forwards, and I'm heading from the first house to the other client's home after finishing up, and I see a small woman, maybe about 140 pounds, with a very annoyed expression on her face. And it was at this moment I knew I was in for a world of hurt, as this lady caused me problems that I truly never expected. Now, at first I wasn't expecting anything from her, and I thought that she wanted to ask me a question about what I was doing to her neighbor's lawn. I mean, this does happen a lot. But instead, I was almost immediately yelled at for apparently parking my truck in front of her house for the third time. She also said comments such as, "How many times do I have to tell you idiots not to park here?" Now, I've been working with this company for almost a year, and rarely, outside of a few brief conversations, I've never had a problem with anyone. And if someone asked me to not park somewhere, I would make a note in the instructions and make sure that future techs didn't repeat the same mistakes. As well, sometimes people ask you to move out of the way or to a different spot because they are picky about parking spots, as well as idling trucks on their lots. Again, this takes all of like 5 seconds, and it isn't a big deal in the slightest. So, after taking in her near nonsensical rambling and yelling, I simply replied by saying, "Of course, that's not a problem, ma'am. I'll make a note in the instructions so this doesn't happen again. I'm sorry for the inconvenience." She then replied to me and said, "Well, good. Make sure you don't park in front of my house anymore." After a few more back and forth of this, where she is basically just saying, "Don't park here anymore," she then walks away, and I think to myself, okay, that's the end of it, right? At this point, I can see that the customer's yard is small, and I think that this yard will take maybe 5 minutes tops. And this is where I think I messed up, because she never asked me to move to a different place and only asked me to not park there next time. So I figured I could go and crack out that lawn too, and thus went off to do exactly that. Because I was a bit behind in my schedule, I very stupidly thought that putting everything back in my truck, only to then take it out again, was unnecessary, and I wouldn't be more than a few minutes, so it should be fine, right? Well, after I was done with that lawn, which took a total of 6 minutes maybe, I came and loaded up my equipment, which only took about 30 seconds, and then I sat back in my truck and started to print out the receipts for the client's lawns. And as I'm doing this, the Karen comes back up to me, but this time she's on the phone with someone and she is visibly pissed. Now, when I say she was angry, I am not joking either. She looked like an over-aggressive chihuahua when it's angry, and she was actually shaking from anger, I can assume. She started to scream at me this time though, which really caught me off guard because again, I'm not on her property, only in front of it. Before she could start her ranting, I called out with my dumb smile and said, "Don't worry, I'm printing the receipts and then I'm leaving. Just give me 30 seconds. Well, this was absolutely absolutely not the correct thing to say. She rushed up to the side of my truck with a face that looked like she would end my life if given the chance. She started flying off the handle and screaming loudly, "No, you will move now. Not later, not in a minute, right now. This is the third time I've talked to you about doing this, and I won't stand for it anymore. I shouldn't have to waste my precious time for a third time just because an idiot like you can't pay attention." Now me, being very confused, just replied back by saying, "I'm sorry ma'am that you've gone through that, but this is the first time I've ever been to your neighbor's house. You may have spoken with a different technician." Well, before I could continue, she cuts me off, shaking even harder somehow and screaming at me, No, I don't care if this is your first time here. This is unacceptable. I don't pay for your service and you shouldn't be parked in front of my house." At this point, I'm slowly cluing in to her slight insanity, and I got out of my truck to go and deliver the receipts, which meant that I had to get closer to her as she was standing right next to my truck. She then yelled at someone, who I assume was a support person from my company, and started screaming, "Oh my God, sir, he got out of the truck and he's approaching me aggressively." Now at this point, I just rolled my eyes and I quickly went to deliver the first receipt. Because I had to cross by her to get to the other house, I heard her once again screaming like a banshee. She was saying to me, "You will not leave later, you will leave right now." Well, as calmly as I could, I said to her, "Ma'am, please calm down. I'm just gonna hang these receipts on the doors and then I'll leave. Look, you're so angry that you're literally shaking. Just calm down for like a second and then I'll leave." Well, she did not like this answer and went on about how I was being rude and aggressive with her. And then out of nowhere, she tells me, "I will not calm down. How dare you? You are leaving right now or I am calling the police." I let out a sigh and I hopped into my truck, still holding the receipt, and turned it on to leave, all while she stared daggers at me, still shaking like crazy. I literally just did not have time for any of this. Now, I will admit that I was a little bit petty here because I looked her in the eyes, grinned with my widest smile, and then I waved at her and I said, "Have a great day, ma'am." And I said that as sarcastically as I could, and then I sped off. Now, this happened so quickly that I can only initially describe it as sudden Karen whiplash. I never thought that this could happen to me, especially with how little I interact with customers. I was legitimately so baffled with what happened that it took me about an hour before I realized I had actually encountered a Karen in the wild. Oh my gosh, I cannot stand when people act like this. It really is insane in my opinion. When will people like this learn that yes, people can park in front of your house? They can put their cars on the public road just like anybody else. The fact that they feel the need to be like, "Wow, you can't park in front of my house on this public street." It's like, no, actually I can do that. If I'm not blocking the driveway, your house, or your mailbox, or like a fire hydrant like this guy describes, then guess what? Legally, I have every right to park there. And sure, there's some extenuating circumstance that I don't know about that I'm sure someone can chime in and be like, actually, this is the exception to the rule. But I think generally speaking, we can all agree that yeah, you can park in front of someone's house if you're not blocking anything. So yeah, this Karen was insane, and the way she was acting, in my opinion, is absolutely unhinged. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. My entitled neighbor called the police on my parents' house, all because my parents banned them from hunting on their property, forcing the game warden and the police to show up under the assumption that my parents were poaching deer. Here's what happened. So my parents are retired and live in a little house on about 7 acres of land. It's not a big plot of land, but it is cozy and it's private, just outside of town, and about 6 acres of woods with a creek running through the middle of it. It's really a beautiful piece of ground. With the woods and creek, they get lots of animals going through, including deer. A couple of years ago for Christmas, we got my parents a few trail cameras so they can see what all is going through. My mom likes photography and she's been able to get lots of photos of deers, foxes, wild turkeys, coyotes, and other wildlife going through their yard. Now, as you may imagine, this is some prime hunting land. My husband occasionally enjoys hunting and has from time to time gone down there for deer season, but he doesn't do it frequently. My parents have had several people stop and ask them to hunt on their land, and they always say no. Frankly, it's just barely big enough to legally hunt, and they don't want people all over their property all the time hunting. They have no problem anytime my husband wants to hunt, which is not often, but then again, he has family. Now, there is a neighbor who lives down the road who badly wants to hunt on my parents' land and has been told no repeatedly that they don't allow hunting. Well, last year my husband was in the woods and he found a tree stand installed that wasn't his. Unfortunately, when they checked the trail cams, the SD cards had been removed. Now, there's no proof that it's the neighbor, but they do suspect him. My parents travel a lot, so it would be really easy to do that without their knowledge. Well, my husband took the tree stand down, and I believe the cameras were replaced with new ones that don't need SD cards. Anyways, last month before deer season, the neighbor again asked my parents to hunt, and they said no. They don't allow hunting except their son-in-law if he wants to hunt. Well, my husband decided he would try and get a deer this year for deer season, so he got a deer permit and went on the first day of deer season, and he shot a decent-sized buck within 10 minutes of getting in the woods. My dad was awake and heard the shotgun blast and came out to see if my husband needed help. My husband field dressed the deer, and then my dad, who is the nicest guy you've ever met, got his tractor out of the garage and drove it to the woods. He scooped up the deer in the bucket and put it in the bed of my husband's truck. So hunting ended pretty quickly into the deer season this year. Well, about an hour later, a county sheriff's deputy and a game warden showed up to my parents' house. Apparently, they said that they received a complaint of unauthorized hunting and deer poaching. The officer said that the neighbor called and said that they had been told repeatedly there was no hunting allowed on that ground, and that they had seen someone go into the woods with a shotgun, heard a shot, and then someone with an orange tractor picked up the deer and put it in the bed of a black pickup truck. Now, in our state, if you are caught poaching, they can confiscate your firearm, any hunting gear you have with you, and any vehicle used in the course of hunting and poaching. So the neighbor was really hopeful that they'd take my husband's gun, truck, and my dad's tractor. Well, that's when my dad said, "This is my house and my land, and the orange tractor is mine. The black truck belongs to my son-in-law, who has permission to hunt here anytime he wants." My husband then produced his valid deer tags, and it was all good. So seriously, screw that neighbor, who had to have been watching the woods with binoculars, because there's no way he could have seen all of that from his yard. Yeah, that neighbor's one of those busybodies who doesn't get their way, so he decides, oh yeah, I'm gonna ruin everybody else's fun. And it's like, why, dude? Just go get a life and go somewhere else to hunt. Why does he get to ruin the fun for everybody else, all because they didn't get what they wanted? So thankfully, this didn't result in you guys getting in trouble, because I'm pretty sure if this was up to the neighbor, then you guys probably would have lost everything in the process. Am I the jerk for no longer giving support to my wife's family after I became successful with my own company, despite them constantly talking down to me about it? Because right now, I'm not sure if I'm justified in feeling this way. Here's what happened. So my wife and I grew up in a fairly poor environment. Her grandfather had money, but her mom didn't and her sister doesn't. My wife has an incredibly strong work ethic, and she's probably more so defined as a workaholic. When I first met her, I was in trucking, and I was making about $70,000 a year. Since then, I developed a niche for a specialty marketing field and became very good at it. And all of my friends encouraged me to go into business for myself with a marketing company. My wife was fully supportive of this, even after we discussed the financial difficulties that we would have for the first year or so due to having a limited budget. And I made sure that she knew that for some months, I may not get a paycheck from the business, as my salary is only paid monthly. Well, her family, however, were not as supportive. They accused me of neglecting my family, being lazy, and not wanting to work. They would constantly be bringing up the fact that I didn't have a job, because apparently I was always home, despite the fact that I work remote. She would defend me, but they would always ignore it, and continue to call me lazy and a deadbeat for putting my daughter in daycare while I work from home. I was still driving a truck part-time to have steady, reliable income, but it was only half of what I was making on a good week. In the last year, however, I have grown my income from my business beyond what I was making in trucking, and I now have very little overhead. Since we cut costs back when I first started, we realized a lot of things we were paying for we could do without, or found other alternatives, and we never really added those expenses back, so it's like we have significantly more money now. I still drive a semi occasionally for a friend who owns a truck, mainly to keep my CDL active and stay knowledgeable in the industry as a fallback. And you know what? Her family has taken note, and they are constantly asking to go out to eat with us and hang out with us. And then they get mad when I never pay for the meals, the outing, or the vacation, or anything. And you know what? Looking back, I can understand why they never had money. They were living well beyond their means. But if it makes them happy, then it is what it is. I let my wife do whatever she wants with her money, which sometimes includes buying stuff for her family, which I support her doing with her money if that's how she wants to spend it. But I make sure that she knows I don't want a dime of my money going to her family, since they were very unsupportive of what made us our money, and would go as far as to talk down about me for doing what led to our money. Now, with all that in mind, I seriously need to know, am I the jerk for how I feel about my wife's family? Because right now, I don't know if I'm in the wrong. Yeah, your extended family sounds incredibly toxic. These people were trying to be like, wow, you're trying something new? You're doing something for yourself that we couldn't do? How dare you do that? You're lazy and irresponsible. Like, the only reason they're putting you down is because they could never do that themselves. Not in a million years would these people ever get off their butts and do something for themselves in this kind of way. So when they see someone doing that, they immediately go, oh my gosh, you're so terrible. And they find every reason under the sun to criticize and put you down. So in my opinion, I don't think you're the jerk at all, because the way your wife's family is treating you, in my opinion, is completely unacceptable. My messy coworker never cleans up her mess, constantly leaving the microwave and the refrigerator disgusting in our break room. So I decided to get some petty revenge in a way that truly ruined my coworker's day. Here's what happened. So I was an office manager for a small family-owned business. At the time this happened, we only had about 10 people working out of our offices, and some of those people were only in the offices for a few hours a week, but we had 5 people in the office full time. We have a small break room area with a refrigerator and a microwave, and everyone kept drinks in the refrigerator, and a few people brought lunches occasionally, but only one person brought their lunch every single day. And for the sake of this story, we'll call this person Jessica. Jessica is not their real name. Now, not only would Jessica bring lunch daily, she would also keep all kinds of food in her office and in the refrigerator. The problem was, oftentimes Jessica would leave food in the refrigerator for weeks at a time, and it would go bad and start smelling, and just taking up room needlessly. Now, Jessica was also the primary user of the microwave, but she would never cover her food, and the microwave was always dirty, which was why no one else used it. So I had to set a new rule that mostly affected Jessica. The refrigerator had to be cleaned out every Friday, and you had to take your stuff home or toss it. Also, Jessica was instructed to clean the microwave every day. Now, I was always the last to leave on Friday, so I started tossing Jessica's food on Friday after she left. This got her attention very quickly, and she would take her stuff home from the refrigerator, but she wasn't cleaning the microwave. So fast forward, and once in a great while, I went to use the microwave and it was disgusting and gross, and Jessica was gone for the weekend. So I ended up cleaning it just so I could pop some popcorn. After I popped my popcorn, I climbed up and unplugged the microwave and put an out of service sign on it. The next week, Jessica came in and was shocked when the microwave wasn't working. I told her I tried to make popcorn and it just stopped working. She asked when it would be fixed, and I told her it was pretty low priority, so I didn't know. The microwave was left unplugged for over 8 months, and the only person who ever asked about it was Jessica. Well, finally, she mentioned it to the owner and he came to talk to me. I explained the situation and he just had a good laugh. Now, Jessica was later let go because of other reasons, but after she was let go, I plugged the microwave back in, and the microwave miraculously was always clean without Jessica using it. And while this is some petty revenge, I'm so glad that it got to her all the way up until she finally got the boot. I love this for so many reasons because honestly, sometimes coworkers can be the absolute worst. They don't clean up after themselves, they treat you like garbage, and it seems like, especially when you have a Jessica in your office, they're always acting on selfish impulse and never care about the general good of everybody else. So personally, I love the petty revenge you enacted on her, because if anybody deserved it, it absolutely was Jessica. Am I the jerk for taking my boyfriend and his daughter to my family gathering, knowing that it would make my brother-in-law uncomfortable in some way? Because as a result, this caused some awful drama, and at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. I'm a 22-year-old male, and I've been dating my boyfriend, who we will call Mark, for about 2 years now. He has a 7-year-old daughter who we will call Lily, and this is very important for the story. I met Mark 5 years ago when I began babysitting his daughter while he worked. For reference, he's a single dad and the mom passed away. And since Lily and I got along great, I became the sole babysitter when he needed. Now, it was practical because we lived 2 streets apart, and just overall the best choice because I was available, I liked them, and they liked me. But eventually I fell in love, and I quickly moved in with him and his daughter, to whom I became a second dad. But here's the core of the problem. My 35-year-old sister is married to my 33-year-old brother-in-law, so every family gathering, I see him. He is relatively a nice guy, even though we're not friends, but he also has never met Mark. Now, at first, when I started dating Mark, he didn't want to come to family gatherings. Reason being is that he's not comfortable around people. He is a shy guy, and of course I understood that. But last week, it was my mom's birthday, and she really wanted him and our daughter to be there, so he finally accepted. When my sister and my brother-in-law found out that he would be there, they were mad at me, and I didn't understand why at first. Well, that is until she took me apart and called me insensitive and egotistic towards my brother-in-law for inviting him, even though I had no idea why it made him uncomfortable. Apparently, when he was younger, his parents divorced because his dad cheated with his babysitter, and it caused him to be traumatized. I told her it was BS, that my boyfriend was a part of my life, part of my family, and I wouldn't exclude him just because her husband was uncomfortable. I also reminded her that there was no cheating, no breaking of trust or anything in my relationship with Mark, but she called me insensitive again and then she left. My mom's birthday party was 2 days ago, and my family loved Mark and Lily, but all day my sister and brother-in-law just kept glaring at us and muttering insults or mean comments under their breath. They brought it up again after dinner, but directly to my boyfriend and our daughter this time, telling her that your dad and his boyfriend are disgusting freaks, or that he's a cheater who doesn't care about your dead mom. Now, obviously, my boyfriend and I absolutely lost it against them. Knowing my boyfriend's temper, I told him to take our daughter to the car while I was ripping a new one to my sister. We then very shortly left, after apologizing to my mom for the mess it caused. But now, my family's group chat is divided. Mostly everyone is on our side, but a few of my extended relatives are on my sister and brother-in-law's side, saying that we went too far and should have just ignored them or went back home. Now, I know that my mom asked for them to come, but I'm feeling really guilty that it ruined her birthdays to have this drama. So am I the jerk in this situation? Because right now I don't know what to do. Okay, I cannot believe anybody's on your sister or brother-in-law's side. Seriously, they're trying to say that you went too far? These people went up to a child and said, yeah, your dad doesn't care about your dead mom and he's a cheater. And it's like, what universe are we living in right now? This is crazy. What is happening here is someone who can't handle their own triggers, and so they make it everybody else's responsibility and punish anybody who doesn't follow exactly what they do. Because if this guy really is traumatized by some like babysitter and like husband relationship, then guess what? Go to therapy and work it out. Don't pin that on your brother-in-law and his new boyfriend and be like, oh yeah, you're part of the problem. You're reminding me of my trauma. You need to stay away from me. It's like, no, I'm just as welcome there as anybody else. I'm not going to modulate my life just because you have some stupid issue that, by the way, has nothing to do with me. And trust me, if I was in your shoes, I would be doing way more than just yelling at these people. The second they got in that kid's face and said any of that is the second they crossed a line that they can never come back from. That is so wildly inappropriate and it is not okay. So these people who yelled at your daughter, as well as anybody agreeing with them, those people suck, and you can know for a fact that they are not real family members, because your brother-in-law sounds like the most self-centered person on planet Earth. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist at the top of the description. And if you want some chill music to put on in the background, check out easymode.com. If you like Am I the Jerk, subscribe to Am I the Genius. Everything will be linked down below in the description.